In September 2019, a large delegation of American citizens investigated more than 20 Russian cities and peoples, thus giving all of us eyes and ears into the life and thinking of Russian people from Moscow to Yakutia in the Far East and from St. Petersburg in the north to Krasnodar and Simferopol, Yalta, and Sevastopol in Crimea. Other cities the group visited were Perm, Kungur, Novosibirsk, Barnaul, Irkutsk, Orenburg, Ufa, Torsog, Sergeyev Posad, Kaliningrad, Petrozavodsk, Tver, Kazan, and Nizhny Novgorod. We sent our U.S. delegates in ones, twos, and threes out to these 21 cities with a list of 24 questions to be delved into while they were far from Moscow. And what did they find? Well, among other important specifics, in each city and town they found that Russia is not our enemy. From the largest city, Novosibirsk, to the smallest town, Torsog, a 1,000-year-old microtown being revived by a female entrepreneur, they found Russians who were delighted that we had come to their regions. Most regional coordinators who hosted them were local entrepreneurs, teachers, professors, lawyers, Rotarians, businessmen and women, all professionals, but none of them connected with the government apparatus. Some of the coordinators had traveled to America on CCI's training programs in the 90s and the 2000s. And others were Rotarians whose clubs had been started by CCI entrepreneurs in those earlier years. Politics, Russian citizens with whom we spoke, ran the spectrum from highly approving of the current government and leadership to others greatly hoping for different leadership when the Putin years end in 2024. All are grateful that Russia is on the incline, that they can travel abroad, that they can create their own destinies, and are greatly relieved that they have survived the terrible 1990s. What is important to them? Their families, higher education, that Russia is bringing back its culture based on 1,000 years of Russian traditions. Gone are the days of wanting to be Americans and Europeans. Russians want the respect and friendship of Americans and Europeans, but not at the price of selling out Russia's sovereignty to the West. The care of all children is a top priority, and that the elderly deserve to be taken care of. They believe that their educational system is still superior to most countries and intend to keep it at high level. They still speak more languages than many other countries, including the United States. Their metros, city buses, and train stops are announced in Russian and in English, which they consider the global language for commerce. Clean cities. Wherever our delegates traveled across Russia, they found amazingly clean cities. One of our 24 questions that they were to explore had to do with the care of Russian cities. We and they looked to see if there was litter in the cities and towns. There apparently was almost none. There are many trash receptacles around the cities and appear to be used by many. Some of our travelers in far-out cities reported seeing some street potholes here and there, but most of us found newly paved streets with carefully marked white lanes. New city buses are prevalent in the cities we visited. A lot of old 5-story Khrushchev housing is still standing and in use, but new high-rise residential buildings are being built nearby. Many classical Russian buildings from 100 years ago have been resurfaced. Their new business buildings look very much like those in Hong Kong and the Asian cities. A speaking engagement had been arranged for us. We were told that it was an intellectual club and that the environment might be a little stiff for us. They were spread out across a very large room. I explained that we were citizen diplomats and why, then gave a brief history of CCI. Then I asked for their questions. With each next person, the questions became more personal. The mood in the room began to change. We were asking each other questions and giving answers in humble and yet meaningful ways. When we broke for tea, the room really came alive. Women and men were coming up to us, giving us hugs with heartful expressions of goodwill and gratitude. This was a tiny moment in thousands of happenings our delegates have experienced over the last 17 days. Yet it points to the type of reception that we receive day after day. This year is CCI's 36th anniversary. We came to Moscow first on September the 16th, 1983. For our anniversary, we hired a private art gallery and celebrated the anniversary with a number of our St. Petersburg alumni. It was fabulous. So many sharings of warm experiences, so much gratitude, so many friendships that have illumined our lives and theirs. The Russian alums took in our new CCI travelers as though they were lost friends or relatives. Fellow Americans, we have just made a journey across 9 time zones in Russia, during which we visited 21 different cities and talked with numerous Russian citizens across the country. We were out there in order to understand where Russia is today, what kind of people they are, what they're thinking, what they think about us. We have explored multiple topics with them, including how they feel about what's going on between our two nations. Of course they're very concerned because they read our newsprint, they watch us on TV, they understand what's going on. And yet, we didn't find any anti-Americanism out there. No criticisms of us and our policies, just worry, just concern, because they understand that this could be the end of the world if we don't straighten up this relationship. Russia is not our enemy, despite what you have read and heard in our media. Russians really, really want to be friends. They want to cooperate with us. They want to be among the nations of the world that helps get to a safer place. And yet so far, they've been pushed aside, and they know it. So they're at odds about what can happen, but looking for any way they can to cooperate. This includes both their officials and all of the non-officials that we met with. Regardless of what we have read and heard about Russia today from our media, Russia is a nation on the rise. It's made amazing progress since 1990, when they were really just flat on their backs because of the whole country falling apart. But since 2000, when Putin came in, actually, the country has begun renovating itself. Russians have not surrounded our nation with military bases and hardware and troops. Russia has not imposed sanctions on any country in the world. Russia only wants to be accepted in the world, to be known as a country that's striving toward good principles, striving toward democracy. Let us in America reject enemy making. Let us try to figure out how it is that we can come together and work with all of the nations of the world without interfering with their own political processes. This may be the only way that we can save humanity from extinction. Let us work toward a multipolar world, not a unipolar world where one nation makes the decisions for everyone, but a multipolar world where we all work together to create a world that works.